For the next 72 minutes, in skies thick with tension and radar noise, that single pilot, trying to scare off the world's most powerful navy, would unknowingly expose the deepest secrets of China's military tech, live and in high definition. This is the story of how one aggressive maneuver turned into a career-ending mistake, and how a routine patrol became an intelligence windfall the Pentagon never saw coming. Welcome back to our YouTube channel. Like and stay tuned. At 2:30 p.m. local time, somewhere over the South China Sea, an American helicopter was doing something that instantly put Beijing on edge. So they scrambled their top attack helicopter to stop it. But what the Chinese pilot didn't realize, he was about to make a career-ending blunder. For the next 72 intense minutes, as he tried to scare off the most powerful navy on the planet, this pilot accidentally gave the US Navy a secret lesson Beijing never wanted them to learn. Here's what happened. The Chinese Z-10 attack helicopter had been launched from Xiamen just 28 minutes earlier with one simple mission: go intimidate those Americans. Meanwhile, the US Navy's MH-60 Romeo helicopter, think of it as the Swiss Army knife of military choppers, was busy tailing a Chinese Type 039 diesel submarine. That sub had been underwater for 48 hours, desperately trying to recharge its batteries. Diesel subs are basically like holding your breath. You can't stay hidden forever. Eventually, you have to come up for air. And guess who's watching? America. Suddenly, crackling over the radio came the warning. Foreign military aircraft, you're approaching Chinese territorial waters. Alter your course immediately. The Z-10 pilot banked sharply, cutting right across the Romeo's nose at just 500 meters. Only problem, they were still 50 nautical miles from any Chinese land, squarely in international airspace, where the US had every legal right to be. The American crew, a pilot, co-pilot, and sensor operator, didn't even blink. Because they knew something the Chinese didn't. For the next hour and 12 minutes, while Beijing's pilot was busy posturing, China was about to make a huge mistake. See that Romeo wasn't just on a casual patrol. Those odd bumps on its body? They're ANALQ-210 electronic support pods. Think of them like high-tech vacuum cleaners sucking up every bit of electronic info from that Z-10. Radar signals, radio chatter, even engine noises. It was all being recorded while the Chinese pilot thought he was intimidating the Americans. The Z-10? It's basically what you get if you order an Apache helicopter off Wish.com, patched together with leftover 1990s Russian tech. Sure, it looks tough with its sharp angles, but honestly, it's more like a souped-up Toyota Camry trying to look like a muscle car. Trying to make a statement, the Chinese pilot fired 2 flares around the Romeo. Not an attack, just showboating. The aviation equivalent of a chihuahua yapping at a pit bull. The American crew's reply? They aimed their dipping sonar straight at the submarine below. Clear message, we see your buddy down there. Panicked, the Chinese sub slammed into an emergency dive, making so much noise from cavitation and pressure shifts that sensors across the entire US carrier strike group picked it up. In submarine warfare, noise is a death sentence, and by trying to protect that sub, the Chinese pilot just handed away its position, and possibly its fate if this had been a real battle. But what Beijing's pilot didn't realize was that things were about to get a whole lot worse. Much worse. At 2:48 p.m., 18 minutes into this failed intimidation game, the Chinese pilot finally thought he had the upper hand. His fire control radar locked onto the Romeo. That warbling tone in his headset? It meant he could simulate an attack. Confidence? Yeah, it lasted about 3 seconds. Because right after that, the Americans flipped a switch, and the fun was over. What happened next was like bringing a super soaker to a Navy SEAL fight. A nearby EA-18 Growler jet unleashed a blast of electromagnetic chaos with its ALQ-99 jamming pods, frying the Z-10's radar. Suddenly, the Chinese pilot's radar looked like a TV stuck on static. His radar lock didn't just vanish, it exploded into a dozen ghost contacts. Some flew backward, others teleported, one even popped up inside his own cockpit. This is what happens when outdated 1990s Russian hand-me-down tech meets cutting-edge American electronic warfare. The ALQ-99 doesn't just jam radars, it makes them hallucinate. It hops across frequencies faster than the Chinese radar can even track. While the pilot's eyes were locked on one channel, the jammer was darting through 50 more. And then things got downright chilling. On his threat display appeared a glowing reminder. The entire US carrier strike group had just locked onto him with their spy radars. Think of it as suddenly feeling the eye of Sauron zero in on you. Meanwhile, FA-18 Super Hornets were already launching from the carrier, not to attack, but to send a clear message. This Romeo isn't alone. It's backed by the entire US Pacific Fleet. The Chinese pilots scrambled, switching frequencies, cranking power, even rebooting his radar. Nothing worked. The Romeo's electronic warfare suite was running simultaneous attacks across multiple bands, what experts call full-spectrum dominance. To the Chinese pilot, it was just, oh no. Meanwhile, the American crew was so chill, they were probably planning lunch. They knew exactly what was coming next, and it was about to get even more humiliating for China. The Romeo's pilot sent a subtle signal, a small ping to point their dipping sonar straight at the submarine below. That sub, still tracked despite all the aerial interference, was now desperate, making wild evasion turns. Each turn, more noise. More noise meant better tracking. The Chinese pilot was doing his own team, no favors. Finally, the US aircraft commander transmitted with a cool professionalism that only comes from total dominance. Chinese military aircraft. This is United States Navy, operating in international airspace under international law. We will maintain course and altitude translation. Nice try, kid. Not today. What Beijing didn't realize was that every single second was pure intelligence gold. They collected massive amounts of data, communications protocols revealing encryption dating back to 2003, radar frequencies showing no updates since they bought that old Russian design, even the rotor blade harmonics that let Americans identify Z-10s from 50 miles away, just by sound. But the Chinese pilot wasn't done embarrassing himself yet. Frustrated by total electronic failure, he closed the gap to just 500 meters, thinking getting closer would help. At that distance, he could clearly see the American door gunner, manning the GAU 21.50 caliber machine gun. Not aimed at him, not yet. But the message, crystal clear. Now, the real mismatch became crystal clear. The Chinese pilot kicked into aggressive, pounding maneuvers, sharp, jerky moves meant to force the Romeo into a weak spot. The Z-10 was lunging left and right, pitching up and down like a boxer throwing feints, trying to bait a reaction. Every move was designed to shove the Romeo into a bad firing position. But those tight turns slammed the Z-10's airspeed and pushed its airframe to the edge of its G-limit. Meanwhile, the Romeo, built on the rugged Black Hawk platform, could handle way higher G-forces without breaking a sweat. In other words, Beijing's pilot was wearing himself out, while the Americans just sat back and watched. And it wasn't just a physical mismatch. The sensor war was completely one-sided. The Romeo's ANAAR-47 missile warning system was tracking every twitch of the Z-10. Max turn rate, climb speed, everything. This data? It would later teach American missile programmers exactly how to intercept these helicopters. The Z-10 was basically handing over its own defeat instructions. The Romeo's FLIR camera was capturing everything in crystal clear 1080p infrared. Exhaust ports blazing at 450 degrees Celsius. Transmission housing heating up to 180. Every hotspot was logged. This thermal intel would tell American engineers exactly where to aim heat-seeking missiles for maximum effect. The Chinese pilot was, unintentionally, giving a full tutorial on how to blow up his own helicopter. And if he thought his weapons could change the game, he was in for a rude awakening. The Z-10's 23mm cannon is decent against ground targets, maybe 2,500 meters, but against a nimble helicopter, forget it. Effective range drops to barely 500 meters. Meanwhile, the Romeo's GAU 21.50 caliber machine gun packs armor-piercing incendiary rounds with an effective range close to 2,000 meters, enough to punch right through the Z-10's cabin like it was made of paper, which, honestly, with Chinese build quality, it basically was. By now, the Z-10's warning panel was lit up like a Christmas tree. Controls were getting sloppy. The helicopter was starting to fight back against the pilot, like it wanted to fly itself apart. The pilot could feel it in his hands, but running wasn't an option. Court-martial was waiting if he backed down, so he switched the warnings to silent and pushed for one last desperate move. He tried locking his radar 14 times, each attempt a goldmine for American electronic warfare experts. The Romeo systems logged every frequency hop, every pulse pattern, every failed attempt to break through the jamming. It was like watching someone repeatedly guess the wrong password while you write down every guess. When the pilot tried laser designation with his electro-optical system, the Romeo didn't just detect it, they identified the exact model and software version. That meant America now knew exactly how to jam, not just this helicopter, but every Chinese vehicle running the same gear. One helicopter encounter just compromised an entire generation of Chinese weapons. The stress was showing now. The Z-10's engines were pushed to 105% max continuous power, lighting up the infrared bloom 40% brighter than normal. The Romeo's FLIR captured every detail. Future American missiles would be programmed to lock on to this very thermal signature. When a Z-10 pushes this hard, it's literally lighting itself up for destruction. The electronic intelligence haul was even bigger. Every call between the pilot and ground control? Intercepted. Their frequency hopping was predictable. American systems could now jam Chinese military comms across the entire region. As the standoff dragged on, the Z-10's performance fell apart. Hydraulic pressure dropping from overheating, transmission temps hitting red, flight controls sluggish and slow. The helicopter was defeating itself by pushing too hard. At 3:42 p.m., the Chinese pilot watched the Romeo's dipping sonar splash down again. The submarine below was still tracked. After 72 minutes, he hadn't moved the Americans an inch. His thumb hovered over the transmit button to report failure, then thought better of it. Ground control was already watching the same radar picture. The American crew had just scored 72 minutes of pure intelligence gold. They now knew exactly which frequencies to jam, where missiles should hit, and how to outmaneuver the Z-10. The message to China? Stick to making knockoff iPhones. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more updates. Catch you next time.